I'm Mateo, the legendary domineering CEO. I'm 30, handsome, charming, and unmarried. Because of those last 3 words, the father of the domineering CEO, that is, my father, tricked me into attending 15 blind dates in a month. I desperately pressed the bulging veins on my forehead and told myself, he's my real father. I should be filial and endure it. And then there was the 16th time. I can't stand it anymore. After returning home from the 16th blind date dinner, I slapped the table and stood up, saying, does our family have a throne to inherit? I'm still young and in the prime of my life. Why should I get married and have children? Or do you just want a grandson? If so, I won't care about the company starting tomorrow. I'll go on blind dates every day, 3 meals a day, from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep. You can attend meetings, handle social engagements, and take care of all the company's affairs, big and small. No way. My father was stunned after hearing this and quickly covered his chest, pretending to be weak. I'm really old. My eyesight is poor, and I can't bear the fatigue. If the company is in the hands of an old man like me, won't it go bankrupt sooner or later? I sneered. Look how lazy you are. Besides, how difficult can it be to find a match? Do you really need to go on blind dates 3 meals a day? Can't you just lower your standards? The old man mumbled, glancing at James, who had been sitting upright beside us without joining the conversation. I raised my eyebrows and said, sorry, I really can't lower my standards. How can I lower my standards when I'm facing my beautiful James every day? James, Assistant James, is the first assistant of the Fae group and my right-hand man. He has fair skin, a beautiful face, a slender waist, and long legs. He can handle both social occasions and household chores. However, he is male. I reached out and put my arm around James's shoulder and smiled provocatively at my father. When you look for a wife for me, she doesn't have to be more beautiful than James, but at least she should be about the same. Otherwise, the gap would be too big for me. My father naturally knew that I was deliberately trying to anger him, but he still couldn't help blowing his beard and glaring. Stop talking nonsense. James is a man. What's there to compare with your future wife? I don't care. I hugged James's arm and rested my head on his shoulder, acting coy. Anyway, in terms of looks, I only recognize this standard. If I were a woman, I'd definitely marry our James. After saying that, I deliberately pinched my throat and added, James, you won't dislike me, right? Get out of here. My dad was probably irritated by this scene. He raised the walking stick in his hand and directly pushed me away from James. Don't involve James when you're being a troublemaker. Go back to your own home if you have nothing to do. I really lose 2 years of my life for every extra word I say to you. I grinned, stood up, and quickly took James with me to say goodbye. The old man lives in a villa area for retirement. I think it's too far from the company here, and the transportation is inconvenient. Usually, I live in a large flat floor apartment in the city. James and I live in the same building, and his place is on the floor above mine. On the way back, James was driving, and I was sitting in the passenger seat. I accidentally caught a glimpse of the light and shadow on the car window gradually passing across his profile. I was immediately amazed and simply openly admired him. What's wrong? Maybe sensing my gaze, James asked me. I said with a big smile, actually, what I said to the old man wasn't a lie. If I were a woman, I'd definitely pester you to marry me. James gave a soft laugh, that low-pitched, muffled sound from his nose. Even as a man, I had to admit that it was really sexy. What are you laughing at? Don't you believe me? Instead of answering, James stepped on the brake and stopped the car. I couldn't help but feel a bit uneasy. What's going on? Did I go too far with the joke? Is he really that straight-laced that he can't even handle such a hypothesis? It can't be. Why did you stop the car? I asked in a daze. Mr. Mateo. James looked at me very seriously. Subconsciously, I sat up straight. I thought he was going to say something like, don't make such jokes next time. But instead he let out a laugh and told me, it's a red light. I turned my head and saw that I had been so focused on looking at him all the way that I didn't even notice the car had already driven into the city. It was a weekend evening, and there was a huge traffic jam. James must have done it on purpose. He really had a good handle on all my thoughts. I was truly blinded by lust and thus fell into a kind of inexplicable embarrassment. Since the car was stationary again, I had no choice but to take out my phone and play a matching game to kill time. Before I even finished a round of the matching game, I suddenly heard James ask, do you plan to stay at odds with Lucas like this? Ha! I was so absorbed in the game that it took me a moment to realize he was talking about the marriage and blind date thing. Let it be for now. Anyway, I'm not interested in getting married or finding a partner right now. The old man will give up after a while. Just let him do as he pleases. James said, I think Lucas is right. You are really too picky. After finishing a round, I didn't get 5 stars. I exited the game interface dejectedly and threw my phone aside. What? Did the old man ask you to be his mouthpiece? James was taken aback. No. So you can't wait to attend my wedding? Ha, no. Do you hope I'll have a loving couple relationship, children, and a happy family? No. Assistant James. I grabbed James' tie and pulled him towards me. At a very close distance, I stared into his eyes and asked, do you really hope I'll get married or not? No. James was obviously stunned. He blinked his eyes in a state of confusion, and the tips of his ears quickly turned red. It was too quiet inside the car. I could even notice that his breathing had become slightly rapid. I don't hope you get married. Tut. He can't stand being teased. I let go of him satisfactorily and retracted to the passenger seat. Sitting properly. James was still in a daze there. I reminded him with a smile. Assistant James, the traffic light is green. Are you going to drive or not? Only then did James seem to wake up from a dream. He straightened his body and restarted the car. While driving, there was no sign on his face, but his ears were so red that they seemed to be dripping blood. I've gained the upper hand, Assistant James. Although you're good at getting a handle on me, when it comes to being thick-skinned, I'm obviously better. Elder Lucas had been quiet for more than half a month and then came back again. This time, it was really something. He introduced me to a female celebrity. I casually found an excuse to invite the old man out of the private room. Gnashing my teeth, I said, what do you mean, Dad? Are your friend's daughters not enough? Now you're eyeing the entertainment industry? Isn't this what you like? The old man looked very proud. I've put in a lot of effort to arrange this dinner. Aren't you going to thank me? I subconsciously glanced at my assistant James. Sure enough, James was also looking at me. He had a calm expression, or rather, no expression at all. But somehow, I felt a bit guilty, and my voice unconsciously rose a bit. Who likes someone? Don't matchmake randomly. Keep pretending. Keep pretending for me. The old man angrily whipped my leg with his walking stick. Didn't you say last week at home while watching TV that the girl was good-looking? I completely lost my memory. Really? As a result, before I could remember, James remembered first and reminded me. Mr. Mateo, it's that drama you said was useless except for the leading actress being watchable. When James calls me Mr. Mateo in non-work situations, there must be a deeper meaning. For example, this time, it's most likely out of schadenfreude. Could it be that lousy drama with a broken script, full of unnecessary tragedies, where the male and female leads clearly have mouths but just won't clear up the misunderstandings, hating each other, and the plot is so messy that it stinks for miles around? I put my hand on my forehead. Dad, you're really my real dad. I said her acting was watchable. Acting? Why do you have such wild associations? My explanation was useless. Elder Lucas firmly believed that I was just making excuses. Before I could say more, his mouth started rattling like a machine gun. Impossible. Don't I know you? If you didn't have a crush on her to some extent, would you have said such a thing? It doesn't matter. Our family doesn't need any business marriages now. You can just boldly like whoever you like. As long as she's a good kid, I won't object. MS. Isabella is great. I think she acts really well in that drama. Your mom used to be in the performing arts. I understand it too well. People who act well must be good people. I think our pursuit as a father-son pair of art practitioners is also hereditary. Hey, don't be afraid that I'll force you to get married. Since you're interested, get to know her, spend time with her, and let things develop naturally. Maybe something will happen. Right, James? James glanced at me sideways, with a half smile on his face. Should be right, Mr. Mateo? I kicked him in annoyance. What nonsense. I don't even remember what she looks like. Okay, but the dinner has been arranged, and the person is already sitting inside. As the president of the Fae group, I can't be so willful and impolite, just pulling a long face and leaving. There was no other way. I could only sit at the dinner table with a calm exterior but a raging heart. The actress is Isabella. Now that I see her in person, she is really pretty, but I didn't dare to look at her too much. The atmosphere at this dinner was really confusing. In the past, at those dinner parties organized by my dad out of mischief, although everyone knew it was a blind date, at least the people at the table were my dad's various friends. We could pretend it was just a small gathering among friends, and they just happened to bring their sons and daughters along. This time it really seems like some ill-intentioned boss has taken a fancy to a female celebrity and is resorting to all means to create opportunities to keep her. My dad over there is lavishing praise on her, expressing his love for that cheesy drama. sharing his understanding of the plot, inquiring about the crew's gossip, and then suddenly changing the subject. Mateo has never praised any other actress before. You're the first one. My mouth twitched wildly. MS. Isabella, don't misunderstand. I don't mean that way. I just simply appreciate your acting skills. My dad hates that I'm so oblivious to romance and keeps stabbing me with his walking stick under the table. My long legs were dodging here and there. There was simply nowhere to put them. Not daring to make too big of a movement, he felt extremely pent up. Mr. Mateo. James suddenly reached out and placed his hand on my thigh. He leaned over and almost whispered in my ear, "Stop kicking me." I glanced at him. Somehow, I detected a hint of something subtle from his gloomy gaze. A sense of danger? At that moment, the hand on my thigh suddenly became burning hot. I didn't mean to. The old man was stabbing me with his walking stick, and I was trying to avoid him. Suddenly, I felt parched. I swallowed and quickly retracted my leg, sitting upright like a primary school student. Damn it, where has all my courage gone? As expected, after dinner, my dad asked me to send MS. Isabella home. There's really nothing new about his tricks. I originally thought of asking James to come with me, but the old man pretended to be drunk and dizzy and lured my assistant James away. I was forced to be alone with MS. Isabella, sitting in my car. She seemed quite uncomfortable. To take care of the girl's feelings, I took the initiative to find a topic and asked, "How did my dad persuade you to come for dinner?" MS. Isabella hesitated for a moment and said, "My agent told me that there was a big boss I couldn't afford to offend who took a fancy to me and insisted on having a meal with me." Why does the story sound so wrong? Is the person who took a fancy to me you, Mr. Mateo? MS. Isabella asked cautiously. I found it a bit funny. Who do you think it is? MS. Isabella let out a sigh of relief. I almost thought it was your dad. Scared me to death. Fortunately, it's not. I was stunned for a moment and then burst into laughter. This dinner was indeed arranged by my dad. MS. Isabella immediately opened her eyes wide in horror. I quickly explained my dad's outrageous behavior and sincerely stated that I had no improper thoughts about her. Who would have thought that after hearing this? MS. Isabella actually showed a somewhat disappointed expression. Well, could you help me ask your dad if he's interested in keeping a female celebrity? I think he really likes that lousy drama I acted in. I was extremely shocked. What do you mean? MS. Isabella didn't say a word for a long time. I thought she wouldn't answer me, but after a while, I noticed her shoulders twitching. She was actually crying with her head down. Those big teardrops kept falling one after another. I was stunned and quickly freed up one hand to grab a few tissues and hand them over. MS. Isabella took the tissues, but her tears didn't stop. Instead, she cried even more sorrowfully. I thought that perhaps some emotions in her heart had been pent up for too long, which was why she was crying like this in front of a man she had only known for a few hours. But I had no intention of prying into her privacy. So I just quietly drove the car. I thought I had finally waited for an opportunity. When her emotions had somewhat subsided, I heard her choking and murmuring. I had prepared myself mentally for so long. Unexpectedly, it's still, Ms. Isabella, don't be so pessimistic. I spoke up to comfort her. If it's a setback in your career, with your excellent acting skills, there will always come a day when you'll be noticed. Apparently, I'm not very good at comforting others. Isabella just gave a bitter smile after hearing my words. With your family background, Mr. Mateo, of course, you can believe that there's nothing in this world that can't be overcome. We are different. She lowered her voice for the last few words, but I could tell that there was resentment in her heart. I didn't say anything and dutifully drove her home. Sorry, Mr. Mateo. I made you laugh today. When she said this, Isabella's emotions had completely subsided. She had returned to being that glamorous celebrity, politely expressing her apology for losing control of her emotions. What kind of joke? I pretended to have amnesia. It was my dad who troubled you today. You shouldn't mind. How could I? Isabella smiled and lowered her head to unbuckle her seat belt, but she couldn't succeed after trying for a long time. I leaned over to help and found that, for some reason, the buckle of her seat belt was stuck. I couldn't unlock it for a moment, so I simply forcefully broke it and pulled it out. Thank you. She got out of the car and left without any hesitation, without asking to exchange contact information with me. Great. I was extremely happy inside. Although the old man will inevitably experience another disappointment, but congratulations to myself. The 17th blind date this month has ended in a complete failure. Obviously, I didn't know at that time that on this very night, the gears of fate had already started to turn wildly. James. After dropping off Isabella, I went straight home and met James at the door. pressing the doorbell of my house. What's up? Why are you looking for me so late? I asked while opening the door. It's nothing. It's just that, well, there are still a few work arrangements next week. I want to confirm them with you again. James blinked at me innocently, not looking like a ruthless workaholic who drags people into overtime work at night at all. I helplessly opened the door and invited him in. Come on, my assistant James. Do you have to be so dedicated? Calling someone to check work at night. I'm really being outworked by you. Moreover, you know the password of my house. Why do you just stand stupidly at the door and ring the bell? You could just tell me and go in to wait for me. Actually, James and I are not just in a relationship of a president and his assistant. We grew up together. He was taken home by my dad when he was 10, and later my dad raised him like his own son. At my home, there is no difference in status between us. Both the butler and the nanny address him as young master. People outside also regard him as an adopted son of my Fey family. His position as an assistant is not what many laymen think. Just dealing with some daily trivial matters. Strictly speaking, he is not the assistant of me, Mateo, but the assistant of the president of Fey Group. He not only leads the entire president's office, but also has to handle a large number of affairs because of my dependence on him at work. I used to think about promoting him to the position of vice president to let him show his talents, but he refused, saying that the title doesn't matter, as long as he can help me and the company. I know that he doesn't really have his heart set on this. Staying in the company and working by my side for so many years without asking for anything in return is all to repay the old man for taking him in back then. I don't force him in this regard, but I always hope he understands that I've never regarded him as an outsider. In my heart, we are like brothers, or even closer than brothers. I'm afraid it might be inconvenient for you. James changed his shoes and walked inside. It took me a while to react. Damn it, is he afraid that I'll bring someone straight home? So, this is the kind of person you think I am. Wearing a suit all day was really suffocating. I raised my hand to loosen my tie, then walked in front of James and lifted my chin. I'm not patient enough and have always been bad at tying and untying ties. If I do it myself, I usually just tug at it randomly. The next day, I'd definitely give James a tie that was completely knotted up from my tugging and ask him to untangle it for me. Isn't she your type? James naturally placed his hand on my bow tie. Moreover, it seems to me that you got along quite well with her. He was a bit taller than me. When he was untying my tie, his eyelashes drooped. After saying the last sentence, he looked up at me. The flutter of his long eyelashes was incredibly alluring. No way. I playfully hooked his chin. I actually like guys with your looks. James chuckled softly. He pulled the untied tie from around my neck. All done. I felt regretful. Now he's used to me making such jokes with him, and most of the time, he's quite immune to them. It's not like before, when we were teenagers. Every time I flirted with him, he'd definitely blush. I said, I was just socializing at the dinner table. If we're gonna talk like this, you two also got along well. Are you interested in her? So, I can introduce you to each other. James nodded. Sure. I didn't expect him to agree and was momentarily stunned, but seeing the smile gradually appearing in his eyes, I knew he was just joking, so I pouted and said, forget it, you two aren't a good match. Why not? Anyway, you're not suitable. I mumbled as I flopped down on the sofa and casually undid a few buttons on my shirt. Are you hungry? This blind date dinner has given me indigestion. How about some late night snacks? Sure. As he spoke, James's eyes landed on my open collar. What would you like to eat? I wasn't sure if it was because of the light or something else, but I felt as if his Adam's apple bobbed. Damn it. Seeing his Adam's apple move, I also unconsciously swallowed. Let's order a seafood congee. I don't know why I stammered. I even silently pulled up my collar. James had no objections. Later, he accompanied me to have a bowl of seafood congee and then went home. I thought for a long time and always felt that there was still something left undone, right? Didn't you say there was some work arrangement to confirm with me? I sent a WeChat message to James. He said it's okay. We can confirm it tomorrow. Go to bed early. Good night. So what on earth did he come here for? Trending Weibo, shocking. The amorous CEO meets a beautiful woman at night and passionately kisses her in the car. Looking at the photo on my phone screen where I was unbuckling Isabella's seatbelt, I was utterly speechless. Nowadays, paparazzi take pictures from very tricky angles. A completely innocent thing was actually captured as a kiss. If it weren't for the fact that this amorous CEO is myself, I would really believe it to some extent. Anyway, this actress is quite pitiful. Most people under that Weibo post were asking who she was. It seems that more people know me, the young CEO, than know her. You still said you weren't interested. I think your relationship is progressing rapidly. I've already said I won't urge you to get married. Why are you hiding it from me? Bring Isabella home for a meal when you have time. My idle old dad was, of course, at the forefront of the gossip. Before I even knew anything, he kept sending me one message after another. I was speechless. Dad, it's the modern era. How can you still believe what paparazzi and hot searches say? I ignored all the other random messages and just replied to my dad, saying that all these were fabricated by paparazzi, and then rushed to a meeting. Recently, James has been on a business trip abroad, and no one can share the work with me. There are a lot of things to be busy with. Who has the time to deal with such boring tabloid news? That afternoon, I received a call from Isabella, the other person involved in the tabloid news. She asked me if I was available and wanted to invite me to dinner. After thinking about it, I agreed. Also having dinner with us was Isabella's agent, Ava. Seeing me, she apologized to me right away and explained that the paparazzi that night weren't specifically targeting Isabella. They just happened to run into us on their way to photograph other artists and took pictures incidentally. I thought it wasn't a big deal. It doesn't matter. If you need, I can cooperate to issue a rumor refuting statement on my side. Unexpectedly, both of them fell silent. What do you mean? I raised my eyebrows. Don't tell me you want to just let this be and accept it as true? Mr. Mateo, to tell you the truth, after being silent for a long time, Ava suddenly let out a bitter smile. Actually, a few years ago, Isabella was almost blacklisted by the entire industry because she rejected the pursuit of the young master of Yunshin Entertainment. No big budget productions or good cast TV dramas would use her. Now she can only act in some shoddy small online dramas. I frowned. I've heard of the young master of Yunshin Entertainment. It's said that he likes to have wild fun. I don't really like to associate with people like him, so we've only met briefly. I'm not a very capable agent. I can't help her break the deadlock. Yunshin Entertainment is deeply rooted, and no one in the circle can afford to offend them. But you're different. This time, someone from your side contacted me and said you wanted to have a meal with Isabella. I was really happy at first, thinking that she finally had a chance to make a comeback. But unexpectedly, she came back and told me that you actually had no interest in her at all. I'm not willing to accept this. I'm really indignant for Isabella. She has so much talent. Should her dream be buried forever just because she rejected a man she didn't like? Ava got more and more excited as she spoke. By the end, her eyes were even a little red, but I only found it ironic. So? You want to use me to pull Isabella out of this abyss? And with this photo as evidence, you want me to cooperate with you in this act of using my power to intimidate others? Yes. Ava took a deep breath and said with some difficulty, you can set any conditions you want. Miss Sophia, my tone turned cold. Do you really care about Isabella's future? What's the difference between asking her to have dinner with me and putting a price tag on her? What if I really have improper thoughts about Isabella? Then what's the difference between me and that guy from Yunshin Entertainment? Isn't this also forcing her to flirt with a man she doesn't like? You've said so much today that you've even moved yourself. It's just because you're all connected by interests. No, it's not. Isabella, who had been silent all this time, suddenly spoke up. Don't blame Sister Ava. She didn't force me. It was my own decision. After all these years, I'm fed up with being suppressed and laughed at everywhere, fed up with almost getting the role I liked but finally being told that it had been taken by someone else, fed up with the feeling of never being able to get what I want no matter how hard I try. She gave a bleak smile and looked up at me with glistening tears in her eyes. Actually, pride and so-called principles are the most useless things for people like us. Maybe if I had understood this earlier, I wouldn't be in this situation today. Looking at her like this, I remembered the time when I sent her home and she broke down in tears. Is it true that if you don't have a dream, it's okay, but once you have one and can't achieve it due to external forces, it will bring such pain? I don't have any dreams. My life path is very clear. It's to take over my father's company and become Mr. Mateo, just like now. For most people in this world, this path is already the best solution in life. I'm a mundane person. Since there's a broad and easy road right in front of me, I'm too lazy to think about other ways. But there are always people who are not mundane. There are always people with dreams. For example, my mother. For example, James, my mother used to be a very promising drama actress. But that year, between giving birth to me and being the leading actress in the previous big play, she chose me. Fate was so stingy with her. The opportunity was only once, and once missed, it would never come again. Later, she drifted further and further away from the career she loved. I wonder if, on her deathbed, she ever regretted missing out on her dream? As for James, I know he likes computers, but in order to repay my father's kindness, He gave up this thing and chose to come to the company to help me achieve my career. Over the years, he has been drifting and sinking in various jobs that he has no interest in at all. Has he ever had any regrets in his heart? After all, people only live once. Forget it, sister. Don't waste Mr. Mateo's time. Ava still wanted to say something, but Isabella pulled on her sleeve and stopped her. Anyway, I'm not without any acting opportunities now. Let it be like this. No, I'll help you. I changed my mind. But I'm a business person. I won't offend the young master of Yunshin Entertainment for you for free. Well, if Ms. Isabella becomes famous for acting in the future, then, no matter how much your commercial value increases, you have to give free endorsements to the products under my Faye Group for 3 years. Also, actually, our Faye Group has always been interested in entering the entertainment industry. Now a subsidiary is being prepared. If you become famous, I want you to sign with my company at that time to boost the popularity of my company. Of course, the signing treatment will definitely follow the market. I won't be that kind of evil capitalist. I like a straightforward way of negotiation and laid out all my conditions at once. Ava and Isabella were both stunned and didn't react for a long time. Sorry, but we domineering CEOs are just so moody. Then, if I don't become famous, Isabella was the first to speak and ask. It doesn't matter. For this kind of risk-free investment of mine, it's normal to fail. Besides, I think I have good judgment and it shouldn't be the case. Oh, right? Also, Ms. Isabella, if you're willing, can you help me deceive my father? I really can't stand him arranging blind dates for me anymore. Actually, there's no need to make a big deal out of a photo. I, Mateo, may not have much else, but I do have a bit of face and connections. As long as I step in to help Isabella make some connections and let her access resources she could never reach before, everyone will naturally understand what I mean. Even if that young Michael from Yunshin Entertainment is unhappy, he wouldn't dare to cause trouble for me because of a woman. So this matter isn't difficult, it's just a bit troublesome at most. The difficult part is actually how to deceive Elder Lucas about my fake relationship with Isabella. My father, although he has been indulging in square dancing and soap operas since his retirement and occasionally does some absurd things, actually has a clear mind. He believes in paparazzi and hot searches because he wants to. But that doesn't mean he'll blindly believe the sudden announcement of my relationship with Isabella. After all, I've always said I didn't like her before. He must be suspecting that I'm lying to him. Sure enough, the old man asked me to bring Isabella home for dinner this weekend. It must be a trap, he said. Before entering the door, I repeatedly warned Isabella, you must use the best acting skills of your life. Don't slack off for a moment, and don't be deceived by my father's kind-looking appearance. The old man is very shrewd. Don't worry, acting is my forte. Isabella wrapped her arm around mine and gave me a sweet smile. Well, it kind of looks real. I rang the doorbell with confidence. As soon as we entered the door, I saw James drinking tea with my father. He looked over, holding the teacup in his hand. His gaze paused on the place where Isabella was holding my arm, and his eyes narrowed slightly. Following my instructions, Isabella naturally acted very intimate with me and greeted the two of them gracefully. What's going on? Suddenly, I felt that her acting skills were a bit too good. James, I didn't know you had already come back. On the surface, I remained calm, but inside, a sense of uneasiness suddenly welled up. Why did he come back 2 days earlier than planned? I thought I wouldn't run into him at this dinner. Yes, James looked at me indifferently. I finished the work ahead of schedule and came back early. I just received a call from Lucas right after getting off the plane, so I came here directly. Ha, what a coincidence. Under my father's all-seeing gaze, I forced myself to hold Isabella's hand. Let me introduce you again. This is my girlfriend, Isabella. Hello, Ms. Isabella. James reached out his hand and gently shook Isabella's fingertips in a gentlemanly manner. His tone was neither overly enthusiastic nor too cold. We met at the last dinner. I'm Mr. Mateo's assistant. Oh, it's not a work occasion. I interrupted James and playfully put my arm around his shoulder. James is actually my best buddy who I've grown up with since childhood. The best kind. I've already been so obsequious, but after hearing my words, the smile on James' face became even more artificial. Ah, could it be that 3 bests are not enough to express the deep friendship between us? Later, Isabella pulled me aside and whispered secretly, Mr. Mateo, don't you think Assistant James has a rather strong aura? I always feel a bit guilty when acting in front of him. I really wanted to say, haha, what a coincidence. I feel quite guilty too, but I couldn't dampen my own morale first. I could only comfort her and say, don't worry, our main target for this trip is my dad. It doesn't matter about Assistant James. I'll handle it. Yeah, right? You may not believe it, but in front of James, I'm really a coward. As my dad would say, it's a case of one thing subduing another. In fact, when I was younger, I was also a well-known troublemaker in the circle of second-generation rich kids. At that time, my mother had just passed away due to illness, and the relationship between my dad and me was extremely tense. We would quarrel as soon as we met. Our family is not a long-established wealthy family. My dad really built his fortune from scratch. Although he always says he was just lucky, I have to admit that the Faye Group's position in the business world today is all thanks to his intelligence and decades of hard work. When a man is devoted to his career, he naturally tends to neglect his family. My mother accompanied my dad from having nothing to being extremely wealthy. At the crossroads of life, she firmly chose love, family, my dad, and me. But in the end, she passed away peacefully in the torment of illness. When my mother was diagnosed with late-stage cancer, it was exactly the rising period of my dad's career. I accidentally discovered her illness. After I finished crying, she wiped away my tears and gently asked me not to tell my dad. She said, "Anyway, separation is an established fact. Telling your father now will only make him sad for a little longer. It doesn't make any sense." I didn't understand. Of course, it makes sense. A foreseeable farewell should rightfully be a long, drawn-out process. If I told everything to my dad, at least my mom could get more company from him in her last days. But I also knew that it was precisely for this reason that my mom didn't want my dad to know. She loved my dad so much and had dedicated so much to him. In her last days, she still didn't want to be the one holding him back. I didn't want her to be so hard on herself, but I could only respect her thoughts. Watching my dad busy with social engagements and his career, coming home late and leaving early, I always couldn't help but persuade him to spend more time with mom. At that time, my dad was entangled in various matters. Every time, he would just drag his tired body, rub his temples, and tell me to be sensible and not to make trouble unreasonably. Those who are unaware are innocent. I knew that. This was my mom's own choice. I also knew that, but I couldn't help but want to hate him. On the day my mom passed away, there was a heavy snowfall. She was lying on the hospital bed, looking out of the window. In her almost lifeless eyes, there suddenly welled up a lot of nostalgia. She whispered, "It's been so many years since I last saw such a heavy snow." Sadly, I thought that maybe she and Dad had some wonderful memories about snow. However, while the heavy snow made her nostalgic for her love, it also buried her waiting. On that day, my dad was on a business trip out of town. When he received the news that my mom was critically ill and rushed back, the flight was finally delayed for a long time due to the bad weather. By the time he arrived at the hospital, my mom had just taken her last breath. She didn't wait for my dad. My dad slumped down and cried bitterly, and I, as his son, wanted to rush up and punch him hard. It was James who stopped me. I roared under the restraint of James' arms. "Do you know how long she waited for you?" Finally, I slumped in James' arms and silently shed tears. My dad could have come back earlier, before the blizzard, but he insisted on finishing that business negotiation which was said to be extremely important to the company. From then on, I openly hated my dad. I refused to give him a good look and indulged in dissipation outside myself. Being decadent for a long time, General Manager James always comforted me, saying that this was not what Lucas wanted either, and that the company was not Lucas's alone. So much effort from so many people had been invested in it, and he couldn't just give up casually. I responded to all of it with cold looks. That was also the worst period in my relationship with James. I always felt that he didn't understand me and was acting as a lobbyist for my dad. When I heard him rationally and calmly analyzing right and wrong, and pros and cons, I just didn't take a fancy to him. However, no matter how far I pushed him away, he was willing to get close to me. When I got drunk and caused trouble and fought, it was he who rushed to the police station in the cold winter night to clean up the mess for me. Woken up from sleep by the phone call, he didn't even have time to put on a thick coat himself, but he remembered to bring me a down jacket and put it on me as soon as he saw me. I didn't answer his calls. I spent days and nights getting drunk in nightclubs with my friends, spending money like water and not knowing what day it was. It was also he who searched for me from one bar to another, from one nightclub to another, and wanted to take me home. I remember that day I was so drunk that I didn't recognize anyone. In a daze, I saw him standing in the strange lights and fluttering gold foil paper in the nightclub, as elegant as a bright moon, as if he was going to illuminate all the turbidity around me. I was extremely decadent and didn't want to move at all, just lying in the booth. He bent down, brushed off the gold foil paper on my hair, and said softly to me, "Let's go home, Mateo." I squinted my eyes and felt stabbed by his clean and otherworldly temperament. Get out! I waved my hand to let him leave, but he wasn't annoyed and still remained patient with me. Someone whistled beside and said, Mateo, is this the one your dad picked up back then? Tut-tut, could he be the illegitimate child your dad had with a woman outside? James gave a cold look at that person, but that person got even more excited. Yo, glaring at me? Such an arrogant attitude. Mateo, I'm saying, can your family even let a dog they casually raise ride on your head? Mind your own business. Who do you think you are? There is also a chain of contempt in the circle of rich second generations. The well-established and prosperous aristocratic families look down on the new business tycoons like my family whose foundation is not very deep. James, a child my father picked up out of momentary pity, is even at the very bottom of the food chain. However, James doesn't want to cause trouble for my family, so he never stirs up trouble. No matter who says something unpleasant to him or how offensive the words are, he always has a calm expression. In the age of being hot-blooded and vengeful, I didn't understand his forbearance and even regarded him as a coward. At home, he obeys my father in everything. My father told him to take care of me, to watch over me, and to guide me, and he did it all. I was really annoyed with him at that time. I thought his blind obedience to my father's orders was also a kind of cowardice. So that day, I got angry for no reason because of his so-called cowardice. I said, yes, who do you think you are? I think what they said is right. You are just a dog my father keeps. Why should I listen to you? Get out of here right now. If you bother me again, don't blame me for being rude to you. That was the first time I saw James with red eyes. He clenched his fists so tightly that the veins on the back of his hands stood out. But his eyes were so vulnerable that it broke my heart. He actually had such beautiful and affectionate eyes. But anyway, he didn't leave. He squatted down in front of me, looked up at me, and gently asked, Mateo, you haven't been home for many days. Come home with me. Okay. His voice at that time was not as steady as it is now, but it could always make people feel at ease. There were all voices around scolding him for meddling in other people's business. I was annoyed by the noise, smashed an empty wine bottle, shouted, shut up, and then, incredibly, I really followed him. He held my hand and walked through the deafening music and the bustling and restless crowd in the nightclub. I followed him closely, looking at his silent profile and how he protected me from being bumped into by the crazy people. Suddenly, I felt that all my decadence and venting during that period were so absurd. I was drunk, so drunk that I wanted to cry. When we got out of the nightclub that day, the sudden spring breeze made me dizzy. I refused to get into the car and couldn't walk in a straight line. So he carried me on his back and walked on the street for a long time, lying on his shoulder. I mumbled, sorry, James. What I said just now wasn't from my heart. I'm a jerk, a fool, a crazy person. Please don't be angry with me. James didn't say a word. I panicked and tightly wrapped my arms around his neck. James, I was wrong. I really was. I won't mess around anymore. I swear. Then, I heard James heave a long sigh. Mateo, I won't be angry with you. But you really shouldn't let yourself sink into depravity anymore. Although your aunt has passed away, over the years, her relationship with Lucas has always been very good, and they both love you very much. Being born into such a family, you're actually very fortunate. There's no such thing as a perfect situation in this world. When you gain something, you have to either actively or passively give up something. It's the same for you and for Lucas. He always tells me that he doesn't want you and your aunt to suffer with him and hopes to give you the best of everything. He just didn't expect that God would be so unkind to your little family. Maybe he made mistakes, but does your aunt want you to punish him in this way? You know, I've always dreamed of having a family where parents love each other and live in harmony. If I could, I'd exchange anything for it. Be good, Mateo. Forget the pain of separation and look forward. Let your mother see that you're living a good life. Okay, I sniffed and agreed, even holding out my pinky to make a pinky promise with James. He laughed at my childishness but still indulged me. I was very satisfied and lay on his shoulder again, saying to him, you don't need to exchange anything. James, you already have a family. My dad and I are your family, and our family is a harmonious one. Later, as I promised him, I got along well with my dad, finished my studies well, and took over my dad's company properly. My dad said that everything has its nemesis, and he was right. James can really keep me in check, and I admit it frankly. I don't want it to be like this either, but he is calmer, more rational, and more tenacious than me. He is just so good. What can I do? The meal when I brought Isabella home to deceive the old man was really indescribable. My dad is very sly. He deliberately asked the aunt to bring me a bowl of soup with scallions in it. It's impossible for him not to remember that I don't eat scallions. And it's also impossible for the ant not to remember. The only explanation is that he wanted to test how well Isabella knows me. Fortunately, Isabella and I had some emergency training and memorized each other's preferences clearly. Seeing the scallions in my bowl, she immediately reached out her hand and offered to exchange the bowl of soup with scallions for hers. The first test passed, and the old man was quite satisfied. I was in great agony, because, unfortunately, James also reached out his hand. In the past, I would definitely have let him take the soup away. After all, over the years, the meals we've had together are more than the miles many people have walked. I'm used to him picking out the scallions for me. Of course, I would also help him deal with the things he doesn't like. This is called mutual help. But my dad was staring at us intently. Of course, I had to act more intimate with my girlfriend, so I pushed the soup bowl towards Isabella. James' hand missed, looking a bit embarrassed. I had a sudden inspiration. I grabbed a wet wipe and handed it to him. He took it and slowly wiped his hands expressionlessly. I wiped the sweat off my forehead mentally. I definitely felt in the wrong for not informing James in advance about this fake relationship. After all, we have such a good relationship, but I have my own considerations for not telling James now. Since James regards my dad as a great benefactor, he is extremely honest in front of my dad. As long as my dad asks a question, he definitely won't lie. He may be a bit single-minded, but I don't want him to go against his principles. Now my dad still doesn't believe that Isabella is my girlfriend. If I tell James in advance and my dad asks him, it will surely be exposed. So, my plan is to wait until Isabella and I have acted out this charade thoroughly. Until my dad is completely convinced and won't try to pry information from James. Then I'll find an opportunity to tell him. In this way, even if my dad becomes suspicious later and asks James, it won't matter at that time. Anyway, this matter can't be hidden forever. Telling James later at least allows me to have a few more peaceful days. But I didn't expect that James seemed quite unhappy about the fact that I secretly got into a relationship without telling him. Usually, no matter whether he is in a good or bad mood, he at least maintains an outward appearance of gentleness. But during this meal, how should I put it? The atmosphere was really tense. My dad naturally noticed it too. He asked James what was wrong, and James said that this business trip wasn't very successful and he was a bit tired. After my dad heard this, he gave me a fierce glare and said, "Don't always exploit James. Although we're all family, you still have to give him the holidays he deserves. I'm so wronged." Okay, I wouldn't dare to exploit James. I've been begging him not to work so hard, and you have the nerve to blame me, Dad. I think James became a workaholic because of you. I was trying to shift the blame, but then James suddenly followed up on my dad's words and asked me, "Then, Mr. Mateo, if I ask you for a leave now, will you approve it?" James looked at me and asked again. "I've been quite busy lately and I'm really tired. I want to go abroad for a vacation for a while. Is that okay?" Over the years, my assistant James has never voluntarily asked for a vacation. Of course I wouldn't refuse. "Sure. Where do you want to go?" "I won't tell you," James said with a smile. "Otherwise I'm afraid you'll call me to work overtime during my vacation. I don't know who loves working overtime more." Although I felt a bit uncomfortable during this meal, fortunately, Isabella managed to skillfully defuse all of my dad's implicit and explicit probes with her excellent acting skills and her understanding of me from the intensive training. The result was quite good. After the meal, I sent Isabella home. Given the lesson from last time, I was very careful all the way this time. Thinking that James said he was very tired at dinner and still insisted on having a drink with my dad, I was a bit worried. So after I got back, I went up one more floor and rang the doorbell of his house. I waited for a long time but no one came to open the door. I was still wondering if he had gone to sleep and was about to leave when the door clicked, and James in a bathrobe, wiping his hair, appeared in front of me. "Ah, a beautiful man fresh out of the bath." These 4 words popped into my mind at that moment. As a man spends so many years together, James is a man, and I should reasonably have created a certain resistance to his face. Really, there just isn't. From a teenager to a young man, he has matured far more than a little. Those eyebrows and eyes have become more and more distinct and charming as time goes by. So, I used to think he was good looking. Then I thought he was really good looking. And now I think he is incredibly good looking. There are indeed objective factors at play. What I mean is, it has nothing to do with my being a sucker for good looks. What are you standing there for? Come in. James stepped aside. I quickly stepped past him into the house and very impolitely opened the fridge myself and took out a bottle of ice-cold water. "You have a weak stomach. Don't always drink ice-cold water," James said helplessly. "I'm used to it." After finishing the water, I screwed the cap on and asked him, How are you? I saw you drank quite a lot with my dad. It's okay. Not much. Not much. You said you were tired from the business trip and still accompanied my old man to drink. I said, why do you bother with him? Just let him drink by himself. No. What are you doing? Maybe because he had just taken a shower or had a bit of alcohol. James' face was a bit red. I wanted to put the ice-cold water bottle on his face. As soon as I lifted my hand to the side of his face, he grabbed my wrist. He had great strength and actually made my wrist a bit painful. Why are you overreacting? I smiled and said, seeing your red face, I wanted to cool you down. James, going against his usual self, didn't let go. Instead, he exerted a bit more force and suddenly pulled me in front of him. He was leaning against the kitchen counter. I was startled and quickly supported the edge of the counter with my other hand to prevent myself from falling onto him. Even so, the distance between us was still too close. James' body temperature was slightly high, and there was a faint smell of alcohol on his breath. His eyes were misty, churning with emotions that were hard to decipher. Mateo, he asked me in a low voice, tell me, do you really like MS? Isabella? I unconsciously swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Fortunately, I didn't lose my head and remembered that I had to lie to him. At present, I do like her quite a lot. James lowered his eyelashes and suddenly let out a soft laugh. Well, that's quite good. Then he let go of my hand and said, if there's nothing else, you can go back first. I'm a bit dizzy and want to go to sleep. I thought he didn't look well and was a bit worried that he might be sick from exhaustion. I wanted to reach out and touch his forehead. Unexpectedly, he turned his head away and dodged. I'm fine. I just want to have a good sleep. I actually suffered from insomnia that night. Clearly, nothing particularly special had happened. But in my mind, James' face just wouldn't go away. After getting a long day and night for so many years, I thought I knew him quite well. I thought his mood was very abnormal tonight, but I couldn't tell why. Could it be that he was really tired of this job? It wasn't physical exhaustion, but mental depletion. If so, I really hoped he would let himself go and gain true freedom. Although in recent years, few people around knew about James' background, he had never escaped from the cage of his original family. James' father was a rapist and murderer. About 20 years ago, my father's business was just starting to take off. James' father was one of the earliest employees in my father's company. In the initial stage of the company, everyone was a partner in the business. The line between the boss and employees wasn't so clear. My father really appreciated James' father and became good friends with him. So I had met him a few times. I only remembered that he was a high-spirited man. But suddenly one day, the police came to the door and took him away. Before long, news spread that when he was still in high school, he had raped and killed a girl from his hometown. Many years ago, criminal investigation technology wasn't so advanced. He managed to escape by chance. Then he was admitted to a prestigious university, came to a big city, and was far away from his small hometown county. He actually carried a young life on his back and step by step, transformed into a talented and high-achieving student. He also got married, had children, and formed a family that seemed extremely happy to outsiders. James' mother couldn't accept such a truth and jumped off the balcony of their home. She fell from a dozen floors and died on the spot. Later, my dad brought James home. James and I went to the same school. At school, what happened to his family was almost well known. Many people distanced themselves from him and even bullied him because of the crimes his father committed. They said he was the son of a murderer and would also become a murderer when he grew up. At that time, James was still so young, but he had learned to endure. No matter how others treated him, he neither fought back nor talked back. First, he wasn't close to me either, but I pestered him persistently. I fought bravely for him at school. Finally, when I was pushed down the stairs and my head was bleeding profusely, he hugged me and cried loudly. He thought I was going to die from the bleeding. After my wound was stitched up, I laughed at him for being silly. He wiped his tears and called my name for the first time. He said, Mateo, thank you. In the following years, we were inseparable. I watched how self-disciplined he was, how he constrained himself, and how he became the James that everyone praised. I knew that he wanted to repay my dad and also prove that he was completely different from his despicable and cruel murderer father. But it was so hard for James to be like this. How could there be someone who is perfect all the time? If he really wants to be the perfect James all his life, then I won't let him succeed. This time was really different. The night before, James just orally asked me for a vacation at the dinner table. The next day, he came to the company to hand over his current work and, by the way, assigned me a temporary assistant. The third day, he boarded the plane. During this period, he just informed me. Even the leave approval note was approved by himself in the company's OA system. What could I say? Of course, I let him go. The only thing that made me a little depressed was that I found I couldn't do without him at all. The assistant that James temporarily assigned to me is very good. He has strong abilities in all aspects. As the president, I have nothing to pick on in terms of work, but emotionally I, Mateo, am really like a fish out of water, so dry. There is no one to go to and from work with me, no one to have meals with me, no one to tie my tie, and no beautiful person to admire. I didn't know before that my life would be so uncomfortable without James. Last time when Mr. Mateo and Isabella were on the hot search, I said Assistant James must be heartbroken. Look, he's so heartbroken that he went abroad on vacation. One day when I was going to work and passing by the pantry of the president's office, I heard several employees inside discussing James. I stopped my steps out of some strange impulse. Alas, there's nothing sadder than a gay man falling for a straight man. Our Mr. Mateo clearly attracts women. I hope Assistant James can think it through. Wait a minute, how do I attract women? I haven't even been in a relationship a few times. Okay, friends, we shouldn't have stereotypes. I don't think so. Haven't you noticed that Mr. Mateo has been absent-minded lately? Without Assistant James, he doesn't even wear a tie to work, although it's quite stylish. It's really not right. Yesterday when I went to Mr. Mateo's office to report work, I saw Mr. Mateo in a daze looking at Assistant James's WeChat moments. Assistant James didn't post much, just a few landscape photos without even showing his face. But Mr. Mateo stared at the screen so intently as if he could see Assistant James in them. Don't exaggerate so much. Why make me sound like a pervert? Can't I just be simply curious about where our James is on vacation? Ha ha, when you say that, I can actually picture it. Mr. Mateo often gets distracted looking at Assistant James. Assistant James is really good looking, but he doesn't have to be so in line with Mr. Mateo's aesthetic, right? Assistant James's look at Mr. Mateo is even more problematic. There's not a single innocent element in it. It's all about feelings. I'm getting the sugar rush again so early in the morning. Wake up, guys. Have you forgotten Isabella? So what's going on with this whole situation? Can we still ship the CP? Don't end up with a mouthful of sugar and then be disappointed. It's so annoying. Several young girls looked at each other and finally ended the conversation with a chorus of sighs. Alas dash. I also want to sigh. James and I grew up together. What's wrong with us having a better relationship than others? Aren't all good childhood friends like us? Young people, shipping everything will only harm you. On the 15th day after James left, I finally saw him again, from the photos taken by others. Guess who I met at the gay bar here? You're James. Why didn't you tell me earlier that he's also gay? Otherwise, I would have chased after him long ago. Okay, the one who sent the message is a friend of mine named Benjamin. He came out of the closet a few years ago and is extremely high profile about his homosexuality. It's almost impossible for others not to know. In the photo, James is sitting at the bar drinking, wearing a white shirt. He isn't wearing a tie, and the collar is casually open. His sleeves are rolled up and folded a few times at the forearms. His long and slender fingers are holding a glass, and the ring on his index finger is shining under the bar lights. Don't all the young girls in the company say that he has an abstinent style? Why is he so flashy after just a vacation? I dare say James is definitely the most popular man in the bar today. By the time I'm sending you this message, he's already rejected 3 people. Ding! Benjamin sent another photo. James is actually smiling and talking to a foreign man. Why does he have to smile at this foreign man who clearly has ulterior motives? Wait a minute, what did Benjamin say this place was just now? A gay bar? Could it be that James really likes men? Ding! Before I could think more, there was another photo. This time, the 2 of them have clinked glasses. Benjamin, tisk tsk, see? They're getting along so well. I think this one has a good chance. In an instant, I was overwhelmed by an inexplicable anger. I directly sent a voice call request and said, "Give your phone to James." Actually, I don't know what I'm going to say to James, but I'm just anxious. Anxiously, I twirled the pen in my hand. Every time I twirled it, the pen would fall out of my hand. When the pen in my hand fell for the 15th time, there finally came a voice from the receiver. But it was Benjamin. He said he's on vacation now and won't answer the boss's calls. Ha ha. I like him so much. Mateo, you're always putting on airs as the president. And now look at you. It wasn't until I got off the plane and set foot on foreign soil that I came to my senses from that hot-headed state. Yes, it's just that strange. I actually bought a plane ticket and traveled across the ocean to find James. Benjamin told me that night, James left the bar with that foreign man. I was so angry that my liver, stomach, and heart ached. I was so angry that I stayed up all night and stared at the ceiling until dawn. The next day, with 2 huge dark circles under my eyes, I dealt with some urgent matters at the company. Then I postponed all the work that could be postponed and immediately bought a plane ticket. These 2 days, Benjamin has been going to bars with James. I asked for the address on WeChat and rushed over with my suitcase. Although I don't know what I'm angry about. On the way to find James, my mind was full of angry questions. As soon as I entered the bar and saw James, I continued my style of the past 10-odd years, being a coward. Mateo? James seemed to be half-drunk. His eyes were filled with the look of intoxication. Why did you come? He clearly doesn't like drinking or going to bars. I don't know what kind of troubles he's encountered that made him accept the comfort of alcohol in this kind of ambiguous and exciting environment. Can't the president take a vacation if the assistant can? I pushed the suitcase aside irritably and sat on the high stool at the bar. Of course you can. You can do whatever you want. James pushed a glass of wine towards me and called me Mr. Mateo. He's wearing a black shirt today and a silver collarbone chain around his neck. It's blinding my eyes. Why does he have to dress like this every day on his overseas vacation? Isn't the company a big enough stage for you? You must have been so pent up. I angrily drank up the wine he pushed over. Only after I swallowed it did I realize how spicy the wine was and showed a grim expression. James let out a soft laugh. Assistant James, it seems your holiday life is quite rich. You're having a wild time every night. I said through gritted teeth. Just as James was about to answer, suddenly a young foreign boy popped up from somewhere to strike up a conversation with him. He started chatting with the boy and ignored me. Fine. Although I've never been to a gay bar, I've been to places like bars and nightclubs so many times in the past. When it comes to having fun, I'll never lose. Then I went into the dance floor with another man who came over and asked me if I wanted to dance with him. James obviously saw me. He leaned against the bar and looked at me across the enthusiastic crowd. The lights were flashing at a high frequency. His expressionless face was bright one moment and dark the next in my vision, giving off a somewhat dangerous aura. I provocatively hooked my finger at him. Seeing that he remained unmoved, I plunged deeper into the dance floor. But to be honest, I'm not quite used to it, because all I could see around me were men. The man who invited me to dance kept wriggling his body close to mine and giving all sorts of hints, but I just pretended to be stupid. Gradually, other people also gathered around me. I still couldn't stand this uneasiness and wanted to leave soon, but there were too many people. The effect of the strong liquor I drank earlier also kicked in. I started to feel dizzy. I was pushed around and bumped into things here and there, and someone even put their arm around my waist out of the blue. The defensive mechanism in my subconscious made me swing my fist, but after seeing who was holding me, I immediately lost my strength. Is it fun? James asked close to my ear. I shook my head groggily. James pulled me out of the dance floor. I sat back at the bar, saw the unfinished drink in front of James, and then picked it up and took a sip on my own. Now can you tell me why you're here? James took the glass from my hand. I turned to ask the waiter for 2 more glasses and pushed them all in front of James. Let me treat you. I'll treat you to all of them. James picked up one of the glasses, raised his eyebrows, and said, Did you come here just to treat me to drinks? I pushed the glass in his hand towards his lips. Drink first. James tilted his head back and drank. His lips were moistened by the liquor. Looking at him, I felt even more dizzy. I said, Of course I came here to find you. James asked, What do you want from me? I shook my heavy head, grabbed his collar, tilted my head slightly to look at him, and said, I'm working hard in the company, but you're here flirting with other men. Do you think that's reasonable? James lowered his eyes. His eyes flickered for a moment, but he didn't say anything. He just pulled my hand away. Why are you just sitting here drinking? It's rare that you're free. Come on. Let me introduce you to my friends. Benjamin suddenly popped up and excitedly put his arm around my shoulder, trying to drag us to have fun. I didn't refuse. In the end, both James and I drank a lot. I came in a hurry and didn't have time to book a hotel. After the party, I just followed James back to his room. It's hard to tell who was more drunk between the two of us. Anyway, we were both staggering. James went into the bathroom, saying he was going to wash up. I followed him and leaned against the door, looking at him in the mirror. I asked him very dissatisfiedly, James, tell me, do you really like men? James turned his head, as if he didn't hear clearly, and asked doubtfully. I simply walked up to him, stared into his eyes, and asked again, do you like men? James said yes. My mind was already in a complete mess, and upon hearing his answer, it became even more chaotic. If you like men, then like me. The words blurted out without thinking. Did you come all the way here for a one-night stand? James stared blankly at me. After a long time, he shook his head. You have MS, Isabella, and I can't. I don't. I almost rudely interrupted his words. I'm not with Isabella. That was a lie to the old man. My actions were completely out of control. I looked into his eyes and at his lips, thinking about him smiling, chatting, and clinking glasses with other men. I felt a fire burning inside me. There was no reason, but I wanted to kiss him. Then I did it. James didn't react at first. I was unhappy and grabbed his clothes, trying to get closer to him. But before I could move, he pressed the back of my head. The next day, I sat up from the hotel bed with a splitting headache. Last night James bit my lips. As soon as I woke up, I felt the pain and gasped, then reached out to touch the wound. James woke up earlier than me. When he walked into the room, he had already washed up and looked fresh and clean. He probably didn't expect me to be awake. He was stunned for a moment and then just stared at me silently. I also stared at him silently. The room fell silent for a moment. Judging from my remaining memories, nothing actually happened between us yesterday, although we ended up in bed later. The after effects of the alcohol were too strong. We were too drunk to do anything and just fell asleep in a daze. But anyway, we still kissed. After being friends for so many years, it's still a bit embarrassing. Ahem. I cleared my throat and spoke first. Yesterday, are you okay? James interrupted me, sat down on the edge of the bed, and said, You drank so much wine yesterday. Does your head hurt? Without the addition of alcohol and the nightclub atmosphere, James became the usual James again. Gentle, considerate, calm, and self-controlled. Seriously, alcohol is really a good thing. I actually quite like that James, who is different from the usual one. I'm okay. I shifted my position and sat closer to him, smiling and saying, My head doesn't hurt much, but my mouth hurts a lot. James was stunned for a moment. His gaze stayed on the wound on my lips for a while and then quickly moved away. Sorry, yesterday, I drank too much. His tone of trying to brush everything off made my heart sink. What do you mean? Matteo, although I do like men, but I don't have that kind of feelings for you. James looked at me with a very sincere expression. You actually don't like men either. Since that's the case, let's just pretend that yesterday's incident never happened. Okay, no, I said coldly. James seemed not to expect me to have such an attitude, and it was so tough, he couldn't find the right words for a moment. James, some things are done once they're done. It's meaningless to try to cover them up. I wasn't angry. Instead, I looked at him very calmly. You said I don't like men. Yes, I admit that I've never thought about it before, but since I kissed you, proves that my feelings for you aren't that innocent. I'm not afraid to admit it. I also don't believe that you don't have that kind of feelings for me. If you didn't like me, you would have pushed me away when I kissed you. So, I think we can give it a try. What do you think? I cautiously asked this last question, but in my heart, I thought James would agree. The young girls in the company all said that he looked at me differently. I didn't believe that he had no such feelings for me at all, but unexpectedly, he just refused. The rejection was even a bit cruel. He said, There's no need. All right then, if he said it was unnecessary, then it was unnecessary. Let him be so stubborn. Anyway, after we go back, I'll still be Mr. Matteo, he'll still be Assistant James, and my dad will still be his Lucas. No matter how unnecessary he thinks it is, he still has to work with me, stay with me day and night, and go home with me on weekends to have dinner with my dad. Am I still afraid that he'll run away? However, because I got carried away for a moment and told James about the thing of pretending to be in a relationship with Isabella to deceive my dad, I couldn't keep it from my dad for long. The old man was angry, but not very surprised. He sneered and hit me with his walking stick, saying, You're already 30 years old, yet still playing such tricks on me. Matteo, you're really something. Isn't this all because of you? I smiled shamelessly. Why don't you consider introducing a few men to me? Maybe I like men. After hearing what I said, James' pupils dilated sharply. My dad just thought I was talking nonsense and didn't take it seriously at all. He even shouted at me, Love whoever you want. Even if you like a gorilla, it has nothing to do with me. Get out of here right now. I slowly backed off. After confessing to my dad, I also withdrew the request for Isabella to pretend to be my girlfriend. She was extremely panicked when she heard that. She thought it was because she didn't act well. I said it had nothing to do with her. And then she became nervous again and asked me about little Michael. I said, Don't worry, my profitable investment still counts. You just act well and don't worry about other things. At this time, James walked into my office. I hung up the phone and looked at him with a big smile. He had a business-like expression on his face. He gave me the documents to sign and informed me of the next work arrangements. I said, Assistant James, I don't even have a fake girlfriend now. Can you consider dating me? James said, Mr. Matteo, it's working time now. I looked at my watch. It'll be lunchtime in half an hour. Well, I'll let you have lunch half an hour earlier. So, what do you think? Consider it, then I'll go have lunch first. James picked up the folder and turned around to leave. I chased after him, held the office door, and looked at him with raised eyebrows. Won't you have lunch with me, Mateo? James pursed his lips and called me helplessly. What's wrong? I pretended to be innocent. We've known each other for so many years. Just because of that one kiss, oh, by the way, you even bit my lips. It still hasn't fully healed yet. Look, I suddenly got closer and pointed at the wound at the corner of my mouth with my finger. James didn't dare to look at me. He lowered his eyes and took a step back awkwardly. I took a step forward. Why are you so guilty? James? Are you afraid of recalling how enthusiastic you were that night? Mateo? James interrupted me in a voice full of suppressed emotions and looked up at me. What on earth do you want? I just want you. I smiled and poked his chest. My assistant James, can you accompany me to have lunch like before? Finally, James gave up struggling. What would you like to eat? One of my greatest virtues is that I'm very open-minded about everything. I didn't think I liked men in the past 30 years. Once that perception was overturned, I didn't feel worried at all. My mother said that love is an irresistible fate. That's probably how it is for James and me. I'm not stupid. I can clearly see that James simply can't resist my flirting. He thinks he hides it well, but in fact, every time he engages with me, his true feelings are exposed. I know he's used to being patient, but I don't understand why he has to suppress his feelings too. After all, I've already told him that I like him too, haven't I? My father is still keen on arranging blind dates for me. I've always been joking around with him, and he probably forgot that I have a temper. One day, I finally couldn't hold it in anymore and had a big fight with him. Dad, what's the point of constantly pressuring me like this? What's so good about getting married and having kids? Or do you want me to be like you back then, busy with work while leaving my wife and kids at home? If you hope that I'll form a family like that to fulfill your dream of having a large and prosperous family, then I'd rather never get married and never have kids. After hearing what I said, it was hard to tell whether the old man was angrier or sadder. He planted his walking stick on the ground, and his hands on it were trembling. I know that my mother is his Achilles heel. In this world, only family members know best how to defeat each other with just one word. You brat. Isn't this all for your own good? So that there'll be someone to accompany and take care of you after I'm gone. It's obvious that my father wants to put on an air of authority. But in fact, his voice is trembling. I built the Fae group from the ground up with round-the-clock hard work. Thanks to this foundation, you don't have to work as hard now. Do you think what I want is some stupid multi-generational family with grandchildren running around? What I want is for you to be different from me back then. I hope you can find someone you love, get married, have your own children, and enjoy your family and life well. Do you understand? Late at night, the arrogant roar of the engine echoed through the mountain forest. I drove a convertible, carrying James, and sped all the way from the foot of the mountain to the top. The wind filled my ears. I turned off the engine, lay on the steering wheel, and my heart rate didn't calm down for a long time. My father's sincere words certainly touched me, but what could I do? I was destined to disappoint his expectations. I had already realized that my feelings were tied to a man. I had long since given up the idea of getting married and having children. Why are you so calm? It makes me feel so unaccomplished. I turned to look at James, seeing that his face remained unchanged. I asked him, aren't you afraid at all? He slowly shook his head. The worst result would be to be buried in the dense forest and deep mountains with you, right? He opened the car door and got out. He walked towards a tree that grew alone and outward on the cliff at the top of the mountain. In the moonlight, his silhouette seemed somewhat sacred. I looked at his back, stroked my left chest, took a deep breath, and felt my heart beating even faster. I really wanted to kiss him. James, I got out of the car, called out to him. When he turned around, I took a few steps closer and pinned him against the tree trunk. He knew what I wanted to do and reached out to block my upper body, preventing me from getting closer. Mateo, he said, you know, a momentary novelty won't last. Before long, you'll realize that you still like women. He lifted his eyelids to look at me, his eyes clear and free of any impurities. Don't break Uncle Faye's heart. He definitely doesn't want to see you act recklessly. He truly hopes you'll live a good life. I stood my ground against him, staring at him for a long time. Suddenly, I understood why he had been suppressing his feelings for me and kept backing off. James, I let out a snort of laughter. Do you have some kind of dedication, compulsion disorder? Just because my dad took you in when you were at your most helpless, you're going to let this debt of gratitude stop you from being yourself for the rest of your life. What about me? You insisted on being so good to me, making me realize that I've fallen in love with you. Now you're insisting on rejecting me. How innocent the first am. Of course, I was just being unreasonable. But when dealing with someone as stubborn as James, how could I not be unreasonable? What does it matter if it's a man or a woman? I like you. If you're a man, I'll like you as a man. If you were a woman, I'd naturally like you as a woman. If you expect me to settle for marrying someone else just because my dad can't accept me being with a man, then what kind of person would I be? Although my dad hopes I'll get married, I believe he wouldn't want his son to be a despicable person who marries under false pretenses. James was stunned by my words. I took the opportunity to get closer and finally kissed him. See, if I can't kiss you once, I'll kiss you a second time. After all these years, don't you know me yet, James? I'm just such a persistent person. Mateo. James's eyes suddenly turned a bit red. I thought he was almost on the verge of tears. I'm not worth you completely changing the path you'll take in the future for me. No. I said no. If even you aren't worth it, then there's no one in this world who is. If you just can't let yourself go, then do it for me. I grabbed James' hand and pressed his palm against the position of my heart, looking at him seriously. For me, for this poor heart of mine that beats wildly because of you, okay? Every day I play the game of he runs. I chase, and he can't escape with my assistant James, and I never get tired of it. As a result, it might be a case of extreme joy leading to sorrow. One day when I was driving out by myself, I accidentally got into a minor car accident. I wasn't seriously injured, I just passed out for a little while at that moment. When I woke up, James was guarding my hospital bed, lying on his stomach and asleep. I sat up covering my still a bit dizzy head, and suddenly woke him up. Mateo, you're awake. James was very nervous. How are you? Does anywhere hurt? I stared at him for a long time and slowly asked, who are you? James' expression froze all of a sudden. I'm James. Don't you remember me? I held his hand and said happily, although I don't remember, but you look so much to my taste. You should be my boyfriend, right? Mateo. James pulled a long face. Don't play such jokes on me. I knew I definitely couldn't deceive him. It's boring. I pouted, lay back down and said, it's nothing serious, just that my head still feels a bit dizzy. The doctor also said I wasn't seriously injured, and I was discharged from the hospital in just a couple of days. But my dad and James still didn't feel at ease. To take care of me conveniently, James simply moved to my house temporarily and lived with me. This was just perfect. I openly changed clothes in front of James every day. I'd get dizzy after watching TV for a while and would lie on James' lap. I was especially afraid of the cold at night and would hug the quilt to knock on the door of the guest room in the middle of the night. As a result, once I got into bed, the two quilts were useless. I definitely opened my eyes in James' arms the next day. Every day, James would just have his Adam's apple bobbing up and down, his ears red as fire, and his eyes darting around, but he remained unmoved. I said, dude, you're really good at holding back. One day when I was taking a shower, a storage rack in the bathroom fell down, making a loud clattering noise. I always said I was dizzy, so James naturally worried about me. He knocked on the door and asked, Mateo, what's wrong with you? Did you fall? I had a sudden idea. I groaned a few times but pretended to be tough. It's okay. I just slipped accidentally. Are you injured? It seems. Ouchie. It seems I can't stand up. Can you open the door now? Let me come in and have a look. I laughed wildly inside. The door isn't locked. Just come in. As expected, when James opened the door and came in, what he saw was me standing under the shower, with my back to him and completely naked. James immediately turned around, but I reacted faster than him. I suddenly grabbed his hand and pulled him under the warm water of the shower with me. Soon his upper body was soaked. The white shirt faintly outlined the contours of his pectoral muscles. I reached out and gently poked it. James immediately tightly grasped my wrist. Mateo. His voice was hoarse and very ambiguous. What on earth do you want me to do? Don't you know very well what I want? I pressed myself tightly against his body. If you still don't show any reaction at this moment, I'll believe you have no feelings for me. James frowned, his eyes turning a bit fierce. Do you have to provoke me like this? I wasn't afraid of him and said, yes. All right. James suddenly grabbed my waist and pinned me against the tiled wall behind me. My back pressed against the shower switch, and the sound of the water stopped. As you wish. James lowered his head and kissed me. We rolled onto the bed. All wet, James propped himself up on one arm, and drops of water from his hair fell one by one on my face. Mr. Mateo, are you happy now? He looked down at me from above, his voice deep and pleasant. I just smiled and said, Assistant James, I see your self-control is really just so. James gave a snort of laughter, straightened up, and reached out to tug at his wet tie around his neck. What else is there for me not to be happy about? I sat up in a hurry and wanted to help him unbutton his clothes, but he reached out and pushed me back hard, and I fell back onto the bed again. Wait a minute. If you're taking off your clothes, why are you tying my hands with your tie? Why is this different from what I thought? I opened my eyes wide and watched helplessly as James leaned down again and forcefully pinched my chin. Mr. Mateo, do you have anything else to say? I nervously swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Assistant James, you, don't be so fierce. After waking up from a nap, my throat was still hoarse. My wrists hurt, my waist hurt, and all kinds of places hurt. But James slept quite soundly beside me. I was so angry that I kicked him. What a fair-skinned, beautiful, slender, waisted and long-legged beauty. It's all a lie. Mateo? James was awakened by my kick. He opened his eyes sleepily for a while, then turned over and hugged me, and vaguely called my name. All right, just consider me spineless. Okay. I originally wanted to kick him again, but in the end, I just angrily pounded the bed. To be honest, I was still a little nervous. Although the situation this time was different from last time, I was still very afraid that once James woke up, he would ask me if we could just pretend that nothing had happened. Of course not. So when James woke up, the first thing he heard me say was, "James, will you be responsible for me?" James obviously wasn't fully awake. He stared at me blankly for a long time and then asked me back, "What?" I pinched his face, got close to his ear, and loudly repeated, "I'm asking you, will you be responsible for me?" James gave a soft laugh and put his arm around my waist. "How do you want me to be responsible?" I didn't hesitate. "Call me husband." James raised his eyebrows and said, "You're the husband?" "I don't care." I started to act shamelessly. "Anyway, if you don't admit it, you're a heartless scoundrel who seduces and abandons. Can't I even take a little advantage verbally if I can't get it in bed?" All right. Sure enough, James whispered something in my ear. "Then this means he'll take responsibility for me, right?" I kissed James satisfactorily and was about to get out of bed. Who would have known that he grabbed me from behind, and in just a few seconds, I fell back onto the bed again. "James, you've changed. You've really changed. You weren't like this before." All in all, relying on my own shamelessness, I fell in love with my assistant James. I originally thought that the transformation from good brothers and superior subordinate relationship to true lovers would cause some discomfort, but unexpectedly, at least for me, I adapted well. I even regretted that I realized my feelings too late. Secret romances. Office romances. It's really exciting. We maintained this secret state for almost a year. During this year, I wanted to confess to my dad countless times, but due to James' many concerns, I had to give up in the end. So we just kept dragging it on. But actually, for many things, making a clean break is the wise choice. If you drag it on for too long, it'll cause trouble instead. One day, because the aunt at home said that we hadn't stayed in the villa for a long time and the old man actually wanted us to accompany him more, James and I stayed here for the night. Having gotten used to having James lying beside me, I tossed and turned and couldn't fall asleep when sleeping alone. In the silence, I heard the door of James' room next door open, so I also got out of bed and then opened my door. James said that he couldn't fall asleep and wanted to go downstairs to get a glass of water. I joked with him with a smile and followed him to the kitchen. Late at night, James took a bottle of iced sparkling water from the fridge. I stood behind him, resting my chin on his shoulder. I clicked my tongue and said, "Poor thing, are you trying to cool your nerves with ice water?" He smiled, gave me a sidelong glance, and asked, "Do you want some?" "Ah." I opened my mouth. "I'll drink if you feed me." Then James unscrewed the bottle cap and said, "Fine, don't drink then. You're so stingy. You won't even share a little water with me." I held onto James' shoulders and turned him around, then kissed him without giving him any chance to refuse. "Stop fooling around." James pushed me and whispered, "Lucas is still at home." I didn't listen. I said that it was late at night and no one else was awake except the two of us, and I insisted on kissing him, until I caught a glimpse of my dad out of the corner of my eye. He was standing outside the kitchen, with an expression of shock and anger that he couldn't hide. That night, the lights on the first floor of the villa were all turned on. My dad had lived most of his life, but he never expected that under his nose, his son and the boy he had taken care of for so many years would get together. He was so angry that he whipped me hard with his walking stick. This was completely different from his previous playful taps. Each strike was full of force. James stood in front of me and took most of the blows for me. I was extremely distressed and pushed him aside forcefully. Anyway, we had to confess sooner or later. This was just an early outcome. I closed my eyes and said bravely, "Dad, Hit me. As long as you can accept us. You can hit me however you want. You're dreaming. What do you want me to accept? Accept that you two men are in love. Why not? Didn't you say you just wanted me to be happy? Now I'm telling you straight. I'll be happy as long as I'm with James. My dad was so angry that he couldn't speak. He casually picked up an ashtray from the coffee table and threw it at me. James reacted quickly and blocked me. Unexpectedly, the ashtray grazed his temple. With such a sharp corner, it directly cut a gash. Beads of blood trickled down his face. Dad, what are you doing? Frightened, I quickly held James' face to check the wound. James shook his head at me, indicating that he was okay. Obviously, my dad was also worried, but he was so angry that he couldn't say the words of concern. Lucas, it's my fault. James protected me behind him. It was me who insisted on being with Mateo. If you're angry, direct it at me. Don't blame him. Fine. My dad let out a cold laugh. I don't blame him, and I don't blame you. I blame myself. James, over the years, I've raised you like my own son. I think I've never treated you badly, but in the end, you've turned my son into a homosexual. Is this how you repay me? In an instant, all the color drained from James' face. I knew these were the last words James wanted to hear. Dad, can you not talk like that? I was extremely angry. You know how much James has contributed to our family over the years. Get out. My dad simply refused to listen to me anymore. He raised his hand and pointed in the direction of the door. Both of you, get out of here. Dad, James, over the years, you've repaid my kindness. Once you step out of this door today, we'll have nothing to do with each other anymore. 2 lines of tears rolled down James' eyes. He knelt down in front of my dad. Sorry, Lucas. I've let you down for all these years and failed to repay your kindness in raising me. My dad turned his head away and didn't look at him. James bent down, laid his upper body down, and kowtowed 3 times to my dad. Lucas, take good care of your health. Then he stood up and left with heavy steps. Dad, even if you can't accept our relationship, you shouldn't treat James like this. You know, what he cares about the most is this. He loves me and is with me following his heart. What's wrong with that? Do you want him to be tied down by your kindness for a lifetime? I choked with sobs. You can blame me for being unfilial or blame me for anything. In fact, it was me who forced him to be with me. You really shouldn't have said such things to him. Even if he's sorry to everyone in the world, he's still worthy of you. I saw my dad's body tremble. I took a deep breath. Sorry, Dad. We're all not very calm today. Let's talk about our relationship later. After saying these words, I chased after James and left. I caught up with James on the windy street at night. James, don't listen to my dad. He's just angry now. When he calms down, we'll go back and apologize to him and have a good talk. It's my fault. James shook his head dejectedly. I shouldn't have had such sordid thoughts about you from the beginning. It was me who dragged you into this. I'm sorry to Lucas. Mateo, I think we'd better call it quits. James, calm down. I hugged him tightly. No matter how he struggled, I firmly didn't let go. This is our own lives. This is our common choice. Even if my dad has shown you great kindness, he can't control a person with an independent personality. Am I right? Trust me, my dad isn't that unreasonable. He just can't accept it for the moment. Trust me, we'll be together. We won't separate. Trust me. Suddenly, James hugged me back very tightly. His embrace made it almost impossible for me to breathe. His tears were scalding hot and seeped into my collar. But it doesn't matter. I know it all. James, who is always used to showing himself as omnipotent in front of everyone, is actually sometimes really insecure and vulnerable. Don't be sad. It's okay. I stroked his hair one by one and soothed him gently. You forgot how I forced you to be with me. No one in this world can out-stubborn me, including my dad. It's not like that. James muffledly denied my words. It wasn't you forcing me. It's because I like you so much that I can't help but want to have you. I smiled and gently touched the area beside the wound on his forehead. It's not bleeding anymore. Does it still hurt? James shook his head. Let me take care of it for you when we get back. It looks quite scary. I held out my palm in front of him. So, James, do you still want to go home with me? James placed his hand on mine and held it tightly. Yes, let's go home. Actually, from my perspective, the words of severing ties that my dad said in a fit of anger are a good thing for James. This is equivalent to unlocking the shackles that James has always been wearing. He has been struggling with self-doubt for too long. If he wasn't pushed by such an extreme situation to make a new choice, it would be very difficult for him to let go. I asked him if he wanted to simply quit his job at Faye Group and do what he really wanted to do. A look of slight bewilderment appeared on his face. And he asked me, can I? I thought he was so silly. This was something he had been dreaming of. Yet he actually asked me if he could do it? Of course you can. I thought the assistant you temporarily arranged for me during your last leave was quite good. Let him take over your job. And then you can swim freely in the vast ocean and fly high in the boundless sky. After considering for some time, James accepted my suggestion. When we were in college, he took computer courses. At that time, I knew he wanted to work in the game industry. However, no matter how outstanding he was at Fae Group, it would be difficult for him to find a suitable job in a field where he had no work experience. Fortunately, he wasn't too concerned about the salary and had a sincere attitude. After several months of consecutive job hunting failures, a startup game studio accepted him. The boss of the studio came from a big company. He was very capable and his way of thinking was not outdated. He appreciated James' courage to change his career path halfway and believed that he truly loved the job. So, he promised James that he would guide him more at work. Of course, the salary wasn't very high. I joked with James that he had traveled far and wide but still returned as an intern. James was quite happy. He said he never thought he would actually end up working in this industry because they couldn't afford the high rent. Their game studio was located in a rather remote creative park. To make it convenient for work, James rented a small single room nearby. I was extremely dissatisfied. You're the boyfriend of the president of Fae Group. It's okay that you're renting a place, but this is what you end up with. It makes me so embarrassed. James comforted me and said, save where you can. Anyway, I'm living alone. A big house is useless to me. In fact, after all these years at the Fae family and holding such an important position at Fae Group, how could he not have saved any money? It's just that he was so stubborn. When my dad said they had no relationship from then on, he settled his accounts and returned the money to my dad. My dad definitely didn't want his money. At that time, he said angrily, this kid James is something. Does he think he can clear his conscience and draw a clear line from me by returning this little money? I reminded him, Dad, it was you who insisted on cutting off the relationship. My dad stared at me for a long time and finally held back and said nothing. This old man is just like this. He is very stubborn. But I can tell that actually, after so much time has passed, he has already started to regret what he said that night. I knew it. My mom is a romantic. Since she fell in love with my dad definitely isn't a pedantic person. He just couldn't think it through for a moment and couldn't quite accept that his son suddenly fell in love with a man. Moreover, maybe the scene he saw that day was really quite a shock to him. Well, the quality of your bed isn't good either, and the sound insulation of this wall is also poor. I patted the bed and then the wall, nitpicking about James' small single room. James raised his eyebrows. Why do you need a bed of good quality and a wall with good sound insulation? I muttered. Well, since you refuse to live in the big apartment with me, I have to condescend to come and stay in this small single room with you occasionally. James suddenly pinned me down on the bed. Well, you've really had a hard time, Mr. Mateo. So in the end, I found out that actually, the quality of this bed is okay. As for the sound insulation, anyway, he covered my mouth, so I didn't make much noise. James is a complete wolf in sheep's clothing. Since changing careers, James often has his days and nights reversed. He is even busier than before. I'm saying, are all start-up companies so inhumane? On Friday evening, I couldn't help but drive across most of the city to pick up my working boyfriend from work, just so I could spend more time with him during the following 2-day weekend. James was walking out of the creative park. I saw him covering his stomach and looking very pale. I quickly unbuckled my seatbelt and got out of the car to meet him. What's wrong with you? Before I could even finish a single sentence, James staggered and knelt down, vomiting a mouthful of blood with a wow. I was so shocked that I was completely dazed. Later, I had absolutely no idea how I called the ambulance and how I followed it to the hospital. When James was being pushed into the emergency room, I received a call from my dad. He wanted to ask me if I would go home for dinner on the weekend. As soon as I opened my mouth, the tears I had been holding back all this time started pouring down. Dad, James just vomited a lot of blood. Will he die? Half an hour later, my dad rushed to the hospital. Later, the light in the emergency room went out. My dad and I vied with each other to question the doctor. The doctor wearily took off his mask and said, the patient had gastric bleeding and went into shock. Before the doctor could finish speaking, my dad started hitting me with his cane like crazy. Gastric bleeding. Oh, just gastric bleeding and you're crying like that. I thought it was some kind of terminal illness. Mateo, are you crazy? The doctor stopped my dad, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Gastric bleeding is no joke, although it's not a terminal illness. You definitely can't take it lightly. Then how is he now? I asked blankly. Don't worry, he's fine now, but in the future, he must be more careful. He can't just abuse his body just because he's young. I didn't react when my dad hit me just now. It wasn't until I heard that James was okay that my mind started to work again and I came back to life. I gratefully held the doctor's hand. Thank you, doctor. Do you want a silk banner? I'll have 10 sent to you tomorrow. The doctor said, thank you, but there's no need. When James woke up, it was the old man guarding by the hospital bed. Because I hadn't slept all night, my dad sent me back home to rest. I managed to get some sleep and then rushed to the hospital without delay. Just as I reached the door of the ward, I heard my father's voice and stopped. I heard from that rascal Mateo that you're living in tough conditions these days. No, Lucas. I just rented a smaller apartment near the company for the convenience of going to work. I knew it was a ploy he used on me. Lucas, you don't need to worry about me. I'm not worried about you. But well, it's not that Lucas, can't afford to support you. You don't have to make yourself look so miserable. Every day, you're renting that small, dark and damp house? You can't even have a few hot meals. And you're even spitting up blood. How can you make me feel at ease? Actually, the dark and damp little apartment and not having hot meals very often were indeed part of my ploy. I promptly pushed open the door and leaned against the door frame. Well, you've admitted again that you're our James Lucas. Caught red-handed while trying to save face. My father looked a bit embarrassed and quickly left. I sat in front of the hospital bed, put on a serious face, and stared at James intently. James slowly reached out his hand and held mine, blinking his eyes. Sorry, Mateo. I promised to take good care of myself, but I failed. No wonder we're a perfect match. His pitiful look didn't seem like an apology at all. It was clearly a ploy. I snorted. Then think of some ways to make it up to me after you recover. Otherwise, I'll tie you up and take you home, and won't let you go to work. Okay. He hooked his little finger with mine. Let's make a pinky promise. I promise I won't do this again in the future. How childish. He's even copying my tricks. After James was discharged from the hospital, my father called me awkwardly and asked me to go home for dinner with him. James was quite nervous. As soon as he walked into my house, he unconsciously let go of my hand. I took his hand back and shouted, Dad, we're back. My dad came out of the study. His eyes immediately fell on our clasped hands, and then he rolled his eyes. I told you your acting skills are no good. The last time you brought Isabella home, Isabella was holding your arm, and you just stood there like a block of wood. If you had been half as thick-skinned then as you are now, I might have believed it. Well, I'm not an actor. It's already good that I could act like that. You dare to say you didn't believe it at all that day. It was really good acting. James beside me suddenly said, I believed it. I quickly played the fool. How could that be? I really didn't put my heart into it at all. Really, I swear. My dad rolled his eyes again. This time it was real disgust. At the dinner table, I accompanied my dad and had a little drink. My dad got drunk and suddenly sighed with red eyes. Alas, the other day, I dreamed about your mom. She said I'm an old-fashioned relic of feudalism and scolded me severely. James, I know I hurt your feelings with what I said last time. I'm sorry. From now on, you and Mateo, this rascal, should live a good life together. I'm old and can't control him anymore. You have to discipline him from time to time. Otherwise, as the CEO, he'll really get carried away. Dad, come on. You've agreed, so stop the personal attacks. Let me tell you, James, this boy, he either lied to me or threatened to quit his job. The other day, he said that if he couldn't be with you, he'd rather live alone and die. He even said he'd return the company to me and go with you. Do you think I can still manage the company at my age? Isn't he threatening me? Dad, that's enough. It's really impolite to expose my past like this. Are you polite? You're always either lying to me or threatening to quit. You're really not polite. James, you have to discipline him. He only listens to you. Come to think of it, it's really fate. If it weren't for you, who could control this boy? Okay. James gave me a smiling look. Don't worry, Lucas. I'll take good care of Mateo. I couldn't help but give him a thumbs up. Only you can interpret discipline as take care of. 2 days later, James and I accompanied the old man to watch TV. Isabella was the lead actress. Since I helped her remove the stumbling block of the young master of Yunshin entertainment, her career has been on the rise. Although she is still a bit short of being extremely popular and a first-tier actress. During this period, the 2 dramas she starred in have received good reviews. Now she has become a well-recognized actress with solid acting skills in the eyes of many audiences. I was very gratified. Look, my investment vision is really good. Who would have thought that my gratification would be interpreted in a different way in James' eyes? At night when going to bed, he licked his back teeth on the bed and asked me, It seems that Ms. Isabella really suits your taste. I was confused. Why do you always think she is the type I like? James said, Wasn't the girl you liked in high school just like her? She had big, bright eyes and a dimple when she smiled. Really? Sorry, I really forgot about such an old thing. Yes, James said firmly. You even wrote her a love letter back then, and you asked me to help you write it. I forced a laugh. Ha ha, let's not mention such an old thing. I've even forgotten her name. James? Well, there's still an Isabella now, isn't there? I couldn't stop laughing. Ha ha, my James? So you can get jealous too. James blocked my wild laughter with a kiss. After the kiss, he said, of course I can get jealous. And? Mateo, over the years, I've been jealous so many times. I was stunned, thinking about how he clearly liked me but dared not admit it before. I felt a pang of sadness in my heart. Don't worry, I reached out and poked his face. There will never be a third person between us. Isabella, I just simply think I have a good investment vision. I explained to James what had happened between Isabella and me. At that time, I did think about whether it was necessary to meddle in other people's business. After all, I only had a chance encounter with her. But later, I thought that since God had given me such a family background, it meant that I could occasionally meddle in other people's business. Actually, I don't really care whether the conditions I propose to her can be fulfilled later, even if she can't become extremely popular and bring limited profits to our company. It's still good that someone didn't stop chasing their dreams due to external forces because of me. So, James, I always hope you can be like this too. Be free and unrestrained. Show your talents in the field you love. In the end, whether your love gets an equal response or not, at least you won't regret it. What about you? James stroked my face and asked me softly. Me? I thought for a while, I don't have any dreams. People without dreams don't have to work hard to chase a certain goal. Then I'll just strive to love and hate boldly. I think I've achieved that, so this life should be worthwhile. Although, when it comes to being jealous, I suddenly remembered something. What was that thing when you took a long vacation and left with a foreign man in a gay bar? I've always forgotten to ask. James laughed and lay on my shoulder. Mateo, how did you manage to make such a big leap in the topic? I was very serious and pushed him. Don't try to change the topic. James said, I thought you had found true love and wanted to go abroad to adjust my mood so that you wouldn't notice anything. You know, I realized I liked men during my adolescence. I would occasionally go to a gay bar and just simply felt relaxed there because everyone was the same kind of people. At that time, actually, I was also very confused. I just thought that maybe having something happen with another man could stop me from thinking about you. But in the end, I changed my mind and didn't go to the hotel with him. I sadly realized that I seemed to be unable to live without you, but I couldn't ask you for love. So, I could only prepare myself to be lonely for the rest of my life. Oh, I became proud. Then you should thank me for saving you. Yes, I thank you. Mateo. James pressed his forehead against mine and whispered sweet nothings to me like lovers do. I think I'm a person chosen by a very small probability. I'm very lucky. No. It's not like this. Although my heart fluttered much later than James. My mother said that love is an irresistible fate, so this probability should be 100%. My mother is an artist, and what she says is always the truth.